I'm going to take a guess on how many times you're going to get shot going in.
You can't touch this.
Bring you on. I don't know why this is. I can't figure this out. This used to be so much easier. Billy and I used to do live feeds all the time. And for some reason or other, Facebook has seen fit to make it either easier or harder, but different in any event. Let's see. So, Billy White. Billy, I'm going to try you on William Witt Jr., all right? I've sent you an invite to William Witt Jr. Oh, Lord. All right, Billy, I'm having trouble with this. And I always have a strange look. Always. I know you're there, Billy. I'm just trying to bring you in, and I'm having a hard time doing it. It doesn't really like the idea of it, I guess. Okay. Allow your viewers to request to join you as you... okay, so Billy, request to join me as a guest on my broadcast, okay? Can you do that? No? Oh, I'm about to, I tell you what, I need to figure out how to use this thing. Okay, Billy, we're going to have to give this a try here in just a second. Billy White wants to be in your video. Yes. Come in. Add. Okay. I did the add thing. It's adding. So that's something we need to know is what the new format is for this. I know you're there, Billy, and it's adding you. What it shows me is that it's adding you. Evidently, it's taking its own sweet time doing it. Is this better? A little less light. Chappie, Billy and I are going to be on Doc's show. I saw where you were talking about being on the show with us. And that is something that if Doc is willing to do that, I'm sure Billy would be happy to have you there, and I would be too. It'd be good to have you there. Okay. I'll bet I could bring Steve Lance on here easier than I could bring you here, Billy. Billy, where are you on my show? Billy, get off the show, and then come back on as a watcher. Let's try that. Oh, is that right? I didn't know that, Chappie. I had no idea. See, there's so much I don't know. There's so little I actually know. I didn't know that at all. Did you go in there like the guy that does? I watched him Thursday. Were you like that Thursday guy? Did you do a regular thing, or did you just go in there when you were needed? Oh gosh. Yes, I'm trying to add you to my bill. I'm trying to add you, Billy. Now I got to approve you. Okay. So. Do I want to tag Donna in this video? Well, sure, I'll tag Donna. That's wonderful. It's giving me all kinds of options except for the one that I really want, which is how to add Billy White to this. Billy, so it says it's adding you. we ought to have about 30 minutes of me wandering around in my own house trying to figure out, do I want to tag Donna? Yeah, sure. Well, Chappie, how did you like the experience? I mean, actually, what was the experience like is more like what I'd like to know. Because we're going to go down there and do some time at on Doc's show one day, and then I believe we got a TV show the next day in Houston. Billy, I'm looking at 2 cameras now. One, I don't understand what's going on. I really don't. Here's what I want to do. I mean, I hate to do this to you, Billy, but what I want to do is, yeah. What was it like working for Klaber anyway? I really want to know that. That's something I'd like to know. Oh, is that right? You and Billy met through the Reverend? That's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, Billy never told me that. Actually, Billy's pretty closed-mouthed about other people, so. Billy, are you accepting my my invites, or are you getting my invites, or what's going on? You and I are supposed to be doing a live feed right now. No, I don't want to carry this show. Okay, all right, I'll carry the show. Fine. Donna, would you bring me that envelope with my voter, with them turning down my voter registration? I mean, my voter.
It's right.
Yeah. Okay. So here, Billy wants me to carry the show. He just doesn't. He says the show must go on. He's grayed out for whatever that means. It probably means nothing whatsoever that we can understand. But I'm going to understand it before we do the next live feed together. Billy and I have been doing videos and just pre-recording them and then putting them up. So this is kind of a first thing in a while. Okay, so okay, yeah, sure. You do one next time you invite me in, because it looks like, unless we learn how to do this, that's the way it's going to be. I'm taking my glasses off because of the reflection of and I just like that a lot. I'd rather have these graveyard eyes, looking at you. But I can't read my thing. Here is so Billy and I were going to do a show today, and it was going to cover a number of subjects. It was going to cover some things that he and Doc did together. There's my link for what, Billy? Gosh. Yeah, this nothing says almost 67 years old like this. Okay, as soon as I finish, I go on to YouTube. Fine, thank you, Billy. I appreciate that. What I would really appreciate more would be your presence on the live feed, because I have my doubts about how interested people are in what I have to say. But I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway, because you can't come on. The first thing I want to cover is Billy's show on Doc Green's show today. Billy was a guest on Doc Green's show on Friday today, as he is on every Friday, and when they wound up talking about different things, Amy Sharon, who is a person that Billy's been going after, but not because he wants to go after somebody, although Billy does like going after people. Hello, Chris Moultrie. And, I could bring Chris Moultrie on camera easier than I could bring you on camera, Billy. I can't figure this out. I think it's because, what you did was you joined me. I think you joined me before. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. I'd probably be wrong. Anyway, Billy was talking about Amy Sharon, who is a person that he has been doing a lot of publicity work with, mainly because she she is an example of why the CPS should be picking up kids. And, I talked to Billy about this and explained to him that, that we don't need to go after CPS entirely for what they do wrong. Sometimes what we need to do is highlight the times that CPS gets it right. And in Amy Sharon's case, the CPS got it right. And Billy's been doing a lot of work on that. I didn't want to do a lot of work on it because actually, it was actually it was just a little bit too much for me. I've worked in community health for a long time, and Amy is a person whose psychiatric profile is such that she was the kind of person that I ran up against all the time, and I think it's better when a community sorts things out than when an individual sorts things out. That's just my look at it. Probably separates me from a lot of other people. So anyway, Billy did this show on Doc Show. Did a portion of a segment on Doc Show, and Chappie, about the abolishment of CPS, it looks like you're going to get your way. I think they're going to abolish them. I'm not against abolishing them. It's just that what appears in their what appears in the place of the CPS when you don't have the CPS historically has not been good. It's been private organizations, and private organizations aren't really responsible to anybody other than whoever the government designates as being responsible to regulate them. And the government's corrupt. The whole damn government's corrupt. I'm sorry, it is. Everything from the mayor of your town and your city councilman all the way up to the president of the United States, we have a corrupt government. It's just corrupt. That's all. And the church would be good, Chappie. I'm not. I'm absolutely. I'm absolutely not against that. In fact, Chappie, if you'll put in some kind of a request to come on, I'll bring you on. I'll try you again, Billy. We'll do this again. Let me approve you. I don't do real well on my own without preparation. I was kind of prepared to do this, but Chappie, I want to kind of follow what I want to follow what you're talking about right now with what we're talking about right now with corrupt government. Our first example of this immigration problem is actually, I'm with you, Chappie. It's hard for me to find my way. Billy and I used to do these all the time, and for some reason they changed it, and they didn't actually make it available how you're supposed to do this. But anyway, our first example with an immigration problem was when we brought the slaves over from Africa, and they became freed. And suddenly we had a population of people that were much different than us, that had citizenship, more or less, in this country. Not so much in the South or the Southeast, but they had citizenship. And yep, I see you, Billy. I just can't get you in. I've approved you. It said it's adding you. It's not adding you. I think Facebook hates you, Billy. It's possible. Maybe it hates me. But we had this group of people. They were freed slaves, and to this day, I will not question the American citizenship of an African American citizen. I'm just not going to question that. So most of those people, their families have been here longer than the white people that live in this country. But I will say this, and that is that even though you have a number of African American people in this country who look and dress and act like the Americans, and all I can say about the Americans is these are the people who were here making a culture. People say Americans have no culture. BS. Americans have a rich culture. It goes back, more than 200 years. The problem is that it's white. And so it's very difficult for black people to fit into that culture. A number of them do it, but by and large, I would have to say that black people live in their own communities. They tend to speak their own language. It's not that different than ours, but it's enough different that we have to have an urban dictionary nowadays, and before that, an Ebonics dictionary. No answer from, anyway, like I said, Billy, I think Zuckerberg just hates you. They're different. They are different from the white American culture. Now what is American culture? When we had television more or less provided us with a culture. You turned on the television set and it was the Cosbys, Star Trek, MASH, Starsky and Hutch, you name it. We had the shows, and they were establishing what the basis of American culture was. They weren't making American culture; they were identifying it. And a lot of Black Americans do not fit into that culture. Watch The Color Purple, and you'll understand exactly what I mean by that. The Color Purple highlights the fact that there's a black culture that is different from the white culture, very different from the white culture. Mississippi Burning, many different movies out there that will show you that. But if you don't, if you don't get out of your house much, get into other neighborhoods, see what other people live like, you won't see it. But if you do, you will see it. Now, so one of the things that Billy and I were going to talk about, and I guess I'm going to talk about it, is this. Donald Trump, our president, seems to be the only political leader, the only person with any political go-to in this country that really understands, and really kind of maybe the only political leader in the world, understands the threat of immigration. We're experiencing climate change, and we are experiencing enormous geopolitical upheavals. And so what's happening is that these two things are creating an impetus for people to emigrate from their countries that are either politically torn or economically torn by war, or poverty, or criminals, or by climate change. Climate change is doing it too. So people are trying to move. They're moving away from their problems. And the U.S., I want to take a look at our Mexican border for a second. I think it explains the whole thing. On the Mexican border, we've got a serious problem. I think it's a serious problem. Other people don't, but I do. A serious problem. I said this is a serious threat. People from Honduras, a no-go country for the U.S., I know, because I lost 5 friends down there a couple of years ago. Well, not quite a couple of years ago, who just disappeared. They disappeared, and the U.S. government isn't doing anything about it because it was a no-go country. American citizens are not allowed to travel to Honduras, and yet we have all these Hondurans who came up through Guatemala, and as they came up, they created a draft behind them that swept up a lot of trash in Guatemala and brought some more brought even more Guatemalans to our country than what we have right now. You would think, listening to me talk, that I have something against Hondurans and Guatemalans, but that isn't true. What I have a problem with is this. People in other countries, especially very poor countries, look at us And we're leaning up against the fender of a car, talking on a cell phone, wearing a new pair of Nikes, everything that Wall Street wants them to see. And they look at that, and they look around their own country, and you know what is there is rocks and mud and collapsed roads and no jobs. Cell phones aren't something that are easily obtained by just anybody in these countries. They're not allowed to have them in a lot of countries. The government is pursuing them for any form of freedom that they might try to pursue in their own country. And so they think the U.S. is heaven. And I kind of do too. I think America is heaven compared to the rest of the world. But people want to come here. Well, I'll tell you another good country, actually, I think is maybe like the outskirts of heaven's, suburb of heaven maybe, is the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a beautiful country. It's a wonderful country. And lots of people want to go there, me included. Billy and I have a friend who moved there not too long ago. He moved to Holland. And as they say, the Netherlands was built by the Dutch, so I kind of equate the two. This guy, I'm going to have to put my glasses on and we'll deal with this reflection, guys, so just cope with it if you can. Oh, me too, Chappie. I've been down there too. I've been across the border a number of times, and you're right. They do bring their problems here, and here are their problems. They don't have a job. They don't have any money. They don't have an education. They don't have a place to live. That is, I mean, they're living somewhere, but they don't have a place, that is actually, like what we have. It's not something that they can identify as their own place. And they get here, and like Chappie says here, they don't see that our laws have any effect on them. It's almost like, well, your laws don't apply to me. I'm just in your country. I'm not a citizen here. I'm actually a visitor, but I plan to stay. I plan to get a job at Pilgrim's Pride in East Texas, and Pilgrim's Pride is going to give them a job. Pilgrim's Pride is going to have somebody there that will aim them at a place that they can stay, provide them with an automobile or a ride to work until they can afford their own automobile, and then the local used automobile dealership will be happy to sell them a car. They'll be able to buy a cell phone. They'll be able to buy those Nikes, and they'll start living like Americans do. But the problem is that they don't know anything about America. They don't care anything about America. They could care less about how we became a country. They don't know anything about what the families of a lot of people who are here in this country went through to make America. They have no idea about the making of America. They just want to take. Now, I understand that. A lot of Americans who have been here for generations have children in their families, and they just want to take. So they're no different in that way. Yeah, I want to get to that. I should have put this thing on. I should have put this thing on Do Not Disturb. There's a lot I'm learning right now. I haven't done this in a long time. So I want to get back to the border situation. Am I back on? Somebody tell me. Chappie or Billy, am I still back on? I'll keep talking as if I am. Okay, great. Thanks, Chappie. Why it is that Donald Trump is the only person who actually understands the threat of immigration, I don't understand. I mean, I really don't get it. I cannot figure that out for the life of me. But it's true. He is. And for that reason, it is for that reason that I did not vote for a Democrat. in the election, and it's for that reason that I support his presidency. I'm really not very happy with a lot of things that he's done. I feel like they could have taken the money he wants for the border out of that big tax rebate that they gave, where you and I got $40 and, the wealthy people got $33,000. Go figure. But I really feel, well, I'm sure that's true. Donald Trump has. But Chappie, to be honest with you, our other presidents have too. Our other presidents have been in other places. This is a bigger issue than perception. This is more than just perception. This is something else. What I believe that it is that there is a group of people whose, you're right, many of the people in the Congress haven't figured that out. But what I think this is that there's a group of people who have been trying and working hard for a long time, longer than my lifetime, longer than your lifetime, to bring about a new world order. I think that these people always saw it, that the world would be under their control. And, I'm not talking about the Illuminati or anything like that. I'm just talking about people who don't want the interference of other people's borders and the laws contained therein to get in the way of their making profits. That's who I'm talking about. Yes, Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, Rockefellers, Scaife, Mellons, you name it. I mean, there's more than just a few of them, but there's a lot of them. That's right. It's the big bankers. It's the people who control the money in this country, and not just in this country, but in this world. And they want to do away with America, and I'll tell you the reason for it. It's because of the Constitution. That's the reason. I'm going to right now. I will tell you that every legal battle that I have ever won, and I've won every one I've ever been in, has been won based on the Constitution. I looked at I know that Constitution inside out, and so I know what you can essentially get away with and not get away with. Most judges don't really like to have their cases reviewed and turned back, so they more or less go along with the Constitution or constitutional interpretation as it sits by the Supreme Court. So back to the border. You've got a lot of people who are, to begin with, the entire country of Mexico is our enemy. I hate to say that, but it just is. The entire country of Mexico is our enemy. You know why? Because those people would never have gotten from Honduras to Mexico City or Juarez or Tijuana or any of the places that they are without rides, without help from the Mexican government. And for Mexicans living in Mexico, I'll bet Mexicans are looking at this situation and going, all right, this is the deal. This is the bomb. We love this. I quite well imagine that is the case, because like you, Chappie, I've been across the border more than once, and I've been down into South America, and I can tell you right now, Americans are hated in those places. You would not believe the hatred that is directed at us, and I just. Chappie, that I'm sure you know that. There's no question in my mind that you know the Constitution inside out as well. You and I appear to know the Bible and the Constitution about equally well, which is to say, pretty well. Now, Venezuela I've never been to, but Argentina I have. So you know, Chappie, I'm sure you can verify to our listeners, to the extent that your experience teaches you, that Americans are not well liked in South America, where it's sort of. Well, I have fun with them too, Chappie. I really do. It is good for two intelligent minds to spar with each other. So anyway, back to the border again. Back to the border. Does Trump do we need to do something about our border and securing it? Yes, it does. It really does. I mean, they could have taken a large tract of America before we ever were able to get down there and do something about it. We were up there in Alaska, trying to build up defenses in Alaska because we were afraid they would invade through Alaska. But the real threat to me would have been the Mexican border. That's what I would have been looking at, and I still don't know why the Mexican border was never really looked at as a threat. But it is one now. And the reason it is one is because it's for the same reason that the cattle ranchers were at war with people who were running cattle and sheep through Wyoming on their way to the to the railhead, and that is that we have water and they don't. We have clothing and they don't. We have money and they don't. We have food and they don't. We have the things that they don't have and that they need and that they want. And it would be a different conversation if we were going to sit down and talk about how are we going to fix that. That'd be a different conversation, but that's not the conversation anybody wants to have. The conversation it seems like we want to have is either we just open up that border and let those people across because by golly, they're thirsty and we got the water right here. Or we got to shut that border down, one of the two. And if it comes down to that, if that's as simple as, if that's as complicated as we can make it, if that's the way it has to be, well, I'm sorry, I'm for shutting the border down. I don't like saying that. I don't want to say that. It's very clear that in their countries, that they are suffering. A lot of people want to say that's our fault, and to a large extent, it is. I mean, I've seen some American ops that went down and read about a lot of American ops before my time that went down to South America, and essentially we went all over the world, taking pretty much what we wanted to do. Doing pretty much anything we wanted to do, taking the resources from other countries. Japan had a good answer for us. Japan heard about us, heard about white people, not us, but white people. Well before we established, well before the Spaniards landed in Japan, and so what they did was they established a shogunate and a system of warlords. By the time the first white people landed on Japan, Japan was well able to defend itself. Well able to defend. There was the same armies that were able to destroy the southeast part of the United States and parts of Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and certainly the Inca lands and Mexico was unable to do anything. Well, no, I'm sure many Mexican families did cross the border during World War II, Chappie. What bumfuzzles me is why the heck didn't they land a force in Mexico or in South America and bring it up through Mexico and invade us through the Mexican border? How'd that not happen? I still can't figure that out. If I was going to attack America, I'd do it. If I was going to do it today, I'd do it across the Mexican border because it is so porous. I mean, I don't know how you got back and forth across the border. I've been back and forth across the border legally and illegally. And it's easy to get into Mexico from America, and it's easy to get back into America from Mexico. The only people that get caught are stupid people. People that don't know the way to do it. I might have been one of those stupid people, but I had help. People who I had help in it, and I quickly learned the right way to do it. So anytime I wanted to get into Mexico, I can get into Mexico. I can come right back too, bring you something from there, and I don't have to go through I don't have to go through a border check. Good heavens! Now, I understand that the nature of the border protection is shifting from a wall to machine gun towers, and that may or may not be true. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is true, it's going to take a lot more than $5 billion to set that up and keep it going. Billy and I have a pretty good idea, I think. If I find a pretty housekeeper down there, Billy, I'll bring you one. You may have to learn a little Spanish, though. They're not too great on learning English until you come up with the right reason for them to do it. But anyway, I think, and Billy and I think that a great idea would be to build a couple of military bases down there. We've got a military base in El Paso. Why not build that military base in such a way that it just stretches across the border in Texas? You know, I think that's a really good idea. If we had a military base where essentially all that land along the border belonged to, that's right. It wouldn't cost us much more than what right now. Mainly the cost would be in moving the troops and the materiel down there, building the facilities we would have to build, and the airstrips, and then they could listen, man. As much as we're fighting in the Middle East, that'd be an excellent place for us to train our soldiers, and so what you would have would be a contiguous and continuous military presence on the border, which I don't think there's anything wrong with. I don't think that says racism. I don't think that says anti-Mexicanism or anti-Latino feelings. That says I'm protecting my border. One of the maddest I've ever been was when I was listening to a guy on Bloomberg, and he was talking about us passing a law that kept Chinese companies from being able to move their companies onto U.S. soil without going through the necessary processes, because that was actually in Congress. And when it got turned down, this guy came on Bloomberg and he said, "That's right, Chappie. You're absolutely right. You are not going to go across the Yalu River and get into China. You know, they catch North Koreans trying to get out of North Korea into China all the time. You know, the Chinese have the same problem on their own border. They have North Koreans who are trying to get out of North Korea. They tried to flee to China. Imagine that, fleeing to China. And they're caught. They're regularly caught. And then they're executed. Same thing. Try getting into the Soviet Union. Try sneaking in there. Same thing and you're right. Iraq it'd be the same thing. In fact, the only country I know of that you can get into as easily as you can in the U.S. is Turkey. Turkey is the only country I know of so far that I can think of right offhand that you can just sneak into their country. We're going to have to do something about that. Now, how does that figure into the Democrat-Republican relationship? That's the question. And I'm going to go on record as saying something that I haven't said before, and it's difficult for me to say. But looking at a government shutdown. I'm looking at a government shutdown that was simply brought on by nothing but pig-headedness on both sides of the aisle. I would say that, but there is something additional to that, and that is that Mitch McConnell is Lex Luthor. Mitch McConnell is an evil genius. Mitch, you're evil. You're evil. I dislike you for being evil, but you're a genius too, and I kind of admire that from from maybe a different perspective than the one you might want. We have got what we're going to have to what we're fighting right now is a perception. I know because I went down to the border and I looked this thing over all the way from Calexico back over to El Paso, and here's what I saw. I saw what I saw was thousands of people. I'm not talking about a few hundred people. I'm talking about thousands of people who are going out into the desert with bottles of water and food and money to give to people who are walking into our own country. And I listened. I didn't want. Partially out of self-interest. I just listened. I didn't talk. And what I saw was a group of people who were very concerned about the kids and the women and everybody, really, the old people who were trying to come into the country and who were dying in the desert. As I worked my way east, I ran into more and more militancy. So that by the time I got into about the middle of Arizona or a little bit before that, I was running into people who were going out there with their AR-15s and their MP4s and doing what they could to stop people from coming. And they were willing to shoot people. I saw what ICE really is. ICE is not the U.S. Border Patrol. ICE is an entirely different entity. It's a whole different animal. Have you, Chappie? As much as you've been on the border, I wonder, have you ever seen a rape tree? That's something right there that'll stop you in your tracks. I'm sorry, but in our country, you and I, we were taught in kindergarten to wait in line. We didn't cut into line. We waited, and we were taught. Yeah, it is. You see those panties hanging from all those branches, and it's just, and I mean, they're actually advertising the fact that, hey, we raped a bunch of women that were trying to come into your country, right here. It's absolutely, it's horrible. No. Sorry, I have a dog thing going on here. Throw a wife in. I guess the point I'm trying to make is this, and that is in California there are more liberals than there are conservatives down there close to the border. At least they're but when you get up into the middle of the state, it's different. But down there in the South, there are more liberals than there are conservatives, and the liberal perspective seems to be that if you're for the wall or if you're for any real strict border enforcement, that you're a liberal. Well, that's not true. You're just an idiot. A well-meaning idiot, perhaps, but still, you're an idiot. If you think that protecting our border is a right-wing bad thing to do, then you need to have your head examined. We have very little left of what we had 40 years ago. If somebody was to say to me, Ronald Reagan asked in one of his debates with Jimmy Carter, he asked voters, he said, just ask yourself, am I better off now than I was 4 years ago or not? Well, of course, people weren't better off because it was a bear market. And Jimmy Carter got this many bills. He got this many bills passed. And he wasn't like George Bush or Donald Trump or Barack Obama. He didn't pass a whole bunch of executive orders to get his way. He just let the will of the people ride. And it made it, and so we had long gas lines because he was opposed to the very thing that we are now opposed to, which is buying our oil from the Middle East. But when Jimmy Carter was against it, he was a stupid idiot. Go figure. But 4 years ago, we had more, in my opinion, than we have right now. When as much as I dislike Bill Clinton, and I would really hate to try to quantify how much I dislike Bill Clinton because I verge into profanity right away. You got to admit, we didn't owe anybody any money when he left the presidency. When he left the White House, we were debt free. And it bothers me that we've got a government that wants to take $20 trillion and give it back to rich people in terms of in tax refunds instead of trying to pay down the national debt with it. $20 trillion would go a long way toward paying our national debt off, but instead we want to give it back to Bo Pilgrim's descendants and the Waltons and Drayton McLean and all the people, Chappie, that you were talking about. But we're not going to do anything about corruption on this video. We can't. I mean, if all of us, if every American, it's already been proven by Harvard and Princeton in a joint study that if every American, every single American was to immediately start doing their dead level best to change this political situation, given the tools that we have, that we wouldn't gain an inch in this fight. It's going to take more than going down and voting. I'll give you an example of it right now. I've been waiting to do this. This is my letter from the Bell County Board of Elections. And what this letter did was it informed me that my early voter registration, was not valid. This was not valid. This is the letter is that my vote that I cast early because I drove a truck for a living was not valid. And the reasons were, it was determined that the signature on the application for ballot by mail and carrier envelope was not signed by the same person. Did I get a phone call or a letter or any notification at all that they didn't think that I signed the letter and the envelope together? No. No, not at all. Why would they do something like that? And then it said the statement of residence was not included in the carrier envelope, and yet it was. I looked at it. So I went down and made a complaint. Billy knows I was pretty mad about this, so I went down and made a complaint. And the very first thing that the guy said to me when I started making the complaint was, he said, "You must have voted Democrat." And I said, "Yeah, I did vote as a Democrat." And he said, the way it works is that in Texas, Republicans count the votes. And he said, so when they do a recount, what they do is they recount the votes, the votes in the person who won the election. In other words, whoever it is that won the election got the most votes. They recount the other guy's votes. They don't recount his votes. They recount the other guy's votes. And they go through. I was a precinct chairman. Guys, I'm not completely illiterate about this sort of thing. 35 years ago, I was a precinct chairman in Bell County. And so I know how it is. You vote. When you do a recount, you count the votes of the party that you're against. So the Republicans count the votes in Texas. That means that when they do a recount, they don't recount all the votes. They recount the Democratic votes. So I got to tell you, I mean, as an American citizen, I can brawl, but I can change it in my area. Hopefully, maybe I can. But I think we should all. I think maybe we should all become involved and stop letting other people run our government. This government shutdown isn't the first government shutdown that we've had. We've had 21 shutdowns in this country throughout our history, we've had 21 shutdowns since the Budget Act that was passed in 1978. The longest one was done by Barack Obama. Most people don't know that, but Barack Obama shut the government down for 21 days. Hey, Billy, enough is enough. Does that ring a bell? Um, so, a lot of people don't really understand that Barack Obama was has held the government shut down longer than anybody else, and that was so that he could get. That's right. It was over Obamacare. Or the Affordable Care Act, as it's otherwise known. So, yeah, it's true. We've had other government shutdowns, and they have been over budgeting issues. They really have. That's right, Amy. Back to Amy. There's an interesting article on a website about enough is enough, and enough really is enough. When you've had enough, you've had enough. And the thing is that I don't know, Chappie, what we're going to be able to do about this. I'm not really sure. Anybody listening out there, anybody who might watch this later on, anybody who might share this with another person, to those people, I'm not really sure that we're going to be able to do anything about that. And I think that well, you and I must have been channeling each other. I wrote an article called "Enough Is Enough" and put it on a different site, but it wasn't about government. It was about a person who was doing something I really wish he'd stop doing. But so anyway, this broadcast, what it's about two things that I think are really, really important. One of them is that I think we're going to have to set our differences aside and support the president in terms of establishing a non-porous border. I'm not kidding. I mean, we just got to have it. We need it. It was maybe what we had before was okay before, but it's not okay now. And he seems to be the only person who knows that. God only knows why. I mean, God alone knows why. And the other thing is that I do read your articles, Chappie. We've even had a write-off, you and I, on the Tea Party Tribune. It was great. I loved it. The monkeys and the frogs didn't like it too much, but so the other issue I think that this broadcast is about is if you're a liberal who happens to watch this broadcast, or if you're a conservative who happens to watch this broadcast, Billy and I have become very interested in what they call the blue movement, the white and blue movement in Italy, actually in Europe, all over Western Europe. And, well, Chappie, I think we're more alike than anybody would know. You know, I mean, we both want the same things. We really do. Our differences are small. They're little. They've somehow or another been blown up into great big things. I don't know how that happened, but we both want clean air. We both want clean water. We both want our grandkids to have schools to go to where they can learn something and be competitive in the world. We both want jobs to come back to America, and we both want a strong border. I mean, there's so much we both want, and yet you could be accurately described as a right-wing conservative, and I could accurately be described as a liberal. I describe myself as a liberal, but those things really have more to do with things that are less important than the ones we're talking about right now. And one thing we've got to do, I think, is to address this issue. You and Billy ran for president? Is that it? And Billy still just wants a Mexican housekeeper. That's all he wants. He wants a little one, though. So if there's anybody out there that's a small Mexican, Billy's looking for a housekeeper. And a good supply of penicillin, because Billy has something that needs penicillin, maybe. I don't know. Just let the bread get moldy. If you work for Billy as a housekeeper, leave the bread out, let it get moldy, and Billy, you can make your own penicillin. one thing this is the other thing we got to do besides supporting the president on the border, and that is we have got to stop looking at issues that regard tariffs and our border as being. You might even know one, Chappie. Something we've got to do is we've got to stop looking at issues that have to do with money and people crossing our border and jobs and the like as being racial, as being conservative or liberal issues. They're not. They are not. Listen, man, I'm not anti-Chinese, but I'm mad as hell about the Dragon Lady. You know, I really am. I dislike it. I dislike the story of the Dragon Lady more than any other story that I know. And that is that back when George Bush was president, what happened is we rounded up all the we did a recycling effort. We got every business that operates in this country to start saving their cardboard, and we bought them special bins and compressors to compress the cardboard together to get the cardboard together and to recycle. Well, the way we recycled it was we bought or rented space on tankers, I don't know which, and sent the cardboard to China to a person who has the nickname of the Dragon Lady. And we gave her the cardboard. We transported the cardboard from the harbor to her facilities, which we built, in trucks that we bought, filled with gasoline that we bought. And therein, those cardboard boxes were transformed into other cardboard boxes by machines that we bought and installed in her facilities, and then paid again to have those boxes shipped to people who were selling us goods from China back here. We paid for that. We did, you and I, and our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids, and God only knows how many generations of Americans are going to pay for that. And she became the first billionaire, the first female billionaire in China. One of the first billionaires in this great, huge movement of jobs out of America. Soon after that, jobs started moving out of America. I mean, they went out. And what we're doing is, when we let our borders be porous, when we allow people to move to this country from other countries, we're moving workers into the country that we ship the jobs out of. That is just as insane as us going and buying gasoline, buying oil from a country that has less oil than we've got in one state in our country. But it's all about moving that money around. It's all about people getting rich. And when people get rich, you know what happens? Other people get poor. Another thing I think I'd like to leave you with before I cut this off, because this whole thing's been extemporaneous and it probably didn't come off too great, but if it didn't, I'm sorry about that. Guys, who loves you, baby? I'm not kidding. In the Congo, we essentially, the World Trade Organization, who is a great, huge villain in this whole thing, WTO, research the riots in Seattle that they had. Yeah, exactly. I ate it. I'm sorry. I was hungry. Research WTO. It doesn't take much to pick up your device and Google the World Trade Organization and the riots in Seattle, especially, where we locked up thousands of people who demonstrated against the World Trade Organization when they had their meeting yeah, Chappie, I really want to thank you for being on this show, by the way. Billy, thanks for reminding me about that. It wouldn't have been a show without you, Chappie. Next time, I'm just going to have you on. We'll do a split screen. But no kidding. Read about that, because the World Trade Organization just assigns countries the production limits and import limits. I'm not kidding; they really do. They are. It's just incredible to me. And the Congo, also do some Googling on the Congo and what's happening in the Congo. We actually, the world we live in right now is operating basically on the goods that we have just raped out of the Congo. I've got a fairly good, I mean, I actually don't have any friends to speak of outside of Billy. There are people that I have that are acquaintances and other people that I admire and like. But, well, no, there's another guy up in South Dakota. His name is Mark Bailey. He's a great friend of mine, and I miss him. But this world that we're living on, yeah, Chappie, I don't blame you for that. I never went, but I had a friend who went over there with Halliburton, and it was. He said it was really hard carrying his toolbox and his M16. I mean, it really wasn't like, we didn't send when we went into the Congo, we made the Congo a place where China, yeah, I'm sure that's true. Did you work for Halliburton too, or for Blackwater, anybody like that? Because usually when people have been to the Congo, I mean, it's people, it's either mercenaries or people who are working security for mercenary, for companies like Halliburton. Halliburton really basically got most of the contracts over there. They really did. No different than Iraq. No different than Bosnia and Herzegovina, right? But WTO. Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Well, then Then Chappie, you know this. You know that in the Congo, if a farmer or a guy who runs cattle finds oil on his property, it's a curse. You know why? Because what happens is they run out there and run that guy off. They run him off. They say, you got 30 minutes to get out of here. He's got to leave. He has to leave his land. He's not given any money for his land. The government does not reimburse him. The oil company does not reimburse him. He is not given anything in terms of being able to he doesn't have anything to show for what he had. Yes, that's right, because the land in the Congo belongs to the Congo and not to the individual, which is kind of stupid when you think about it, because the guy who's been working that land as a farmer probably it's intergenerational. And now he's got to go. And so what happens? Well, he meets up with some other guys that are around there that have been run out of their property, and as soon as they build a pipeline through there, what happens is these guys go over there and steal oil from the pipeline, and because really companies don't have any ability to go in and deploy their own troops, their own armed personnel to fight back against this, they invent a term called force majeure. It's actually, they didn't invent it. Force majeure has been around. It's a French term that they used when they were, when France was a colonial country, imperial. And hey, Justin, look, how's it going, guy? I was just looking at a picture of you, and your wife were really young. No, I can't believe we were ever that young. Force majeure basically means that that the company can go to the country, in this case the Congo, and invoke what is called force majeure, which is a French word that really doesn't mean anything other than, hey, can we turn armed people loose on these people that are sick? Because this is an act of war. They turn stealing oil from the pipeline into an act of war. And now there's military down there. Military goes in there. They don't, in the Congo, they don't send the military down. They send these they send in these people that you wouldn't believe. They're called devils on a broom. I think the translation is devils on a broom. These are the guys that hack pieces off of other people, and yeah, that's right. It's because they're stealing oil from the pipelines, but they're stealing oil from the pipelines because the Congo came in and threw them off their property so that Standard Oil could start pumping oil out of their cornfield. I mean, come on. You know, you can't really expect that people are just going to stand. Oh, okay. I guess I'll just go. Where are they going to go? And when you live in the Congo, you were there. You saw it. You saw it from the air. Where are they going to go? Really, seriously, they got nowhere to go. They're just and I'll tell you what is unwelcome as hell in the Congo, or really Uganda, or any of those West African nations, or Central African nations. The least welcome thing is a relative who doesn't have a job. I'm not kidding you, man. They don't have any use for you. So, what I want us to do is I want us to look at this, try and draw this together into something coherent. First, there are forces that are causing emigration from other countries, and our country is one of those places that is being overrun. Western Europe, I'm going to tell you, what's happening in Western Europe is, I'll come back to this blue and white issue for a minute that Billy and I you're going to be hearing a lot of this out of Billy and I. And that is, it's something that's being organized and run by one of Donald Trump's former campaign aides, and I really can't think of his name right now, but he's somebody you'll remember. May have been Manafort. No, it wasn't Manafort. He's in jail. Anyway, he's been very busy in Western Europe putting together the blue and the white. I will, Billy. Where you have a populist movement that is populated by the left and the right. So, Chappie and I were talking a little while ago about how it is that we're more alike than we are different. But he's right wing, and I'm left wing. But we still have more in common than we have as a difference. Different between us. We want the same thing. So what is needed is a populist movement. We need a populist movement in this country. We almost saw the Democrats pull it off in this last election. I think that if the recount had gone properly in Florida and in Texas, then we'd have two more Democratic senators. Look, don't take my word for it. Look it up. The Republicans put $20 million into Ted Cruz's campaign 4 days before the election. 4 days, they dumped $20 million in it. Well, I guess it costs a lot of money to get people to count up, Democratic ballots and find ways to get them thrown out. I don't know what they spend all that money on, but I'm sure that was I'm sure that this right here accounts for some of that $20 million that the Koch brothers made sure that Ted Cruz had available to him. And I'm going to be putting up a live feed pretty soon. Well, I don't know about that. I think it's true. Chappie, I'm gonna give you something here that I'm seriously, I believe this. I think that a lot of Democrats are being led toward. Personally, I don't have anything against socialism, so there's that. But I am against. I'm against the kind of socialism that you saw in the Soviet Union. I'm against that kind of socialism, but I'm not against Medicare. I'm not against Medicaid. I'm not against Social Security. I'm not against laws that protect you and I as much as they protect the guy that owns the bank down the road. That's socialism, isn't it? Yes, it is. So I'll answer my own question for that. So yes, they are, and I'm one of the Democrats you had 20 years ago, and you still got me until I die. But a lot of Democrats are being led down the road, down this path by CNN and. Listen, man. Ever since Bill Clinton passed that law, that said that it was the 1990 the 1996. I'd have to look at it. I'm kind of wound up, so it's hard for me to remember it right now. But the law said that the news is no longer the news; it's now infotainment. Ever since that law got passed, and Rupert Murdoch went out there and bought every newspaper and magazine, and bought his own TV station that lost, I forget how many millions of dollars until it's for the first 2 or 3 years that it ran, until it started making money. Rupert Murdoch had the money to pour into it. And if you want to know about Rupert Murdoch and what kind of guy he is where the news is concerned, just look at Hitler's diaries. Google up Hitler's diaries and look at Rupert Murdoch's role in that. You'll see a very crystal clear view of this guy. So we don't have the news anymore. It used to be 6 o'clock in the evening. Everybody sat down, watched the news, and if anything important was going on, we knew about it. But that's not the case anymore. What we have now is infotainment. And I actually don't trust anything I see. I just don't trust it. Man, I got to do a lot of research on something before I'm going to buy it. And I'm glad I'm as old as I am, because I've got a good memory, and so I don't have to. So when somebody says something untrue about what happened in 1986, I know that. Yes, Fox is just as bad. They're all just as bad. Every single one of them has an agenda. And you know what that agenda is? It's to make money. And so advertisers, they come in and they pay, they give you money for saying certain things. And they don't come right out and say this and say that. A bird, you can teach a bird how to type. All you got to do is put little bird seeds down on the hello, Sharon Swafford. Let me wave at you. And I'll tell you, there's a gal. You put little pieces of bird seed down on the keys, and the pigeons will peck that bird seed, and they'll type out what you want them to type out. Well, it's the same thing with our news agencies. They're manipulating public opinion. Absolutely. Chappie Gypsy just said it. Mind manipulation. That's exactly what's going on. Yep, I'm a credentialed psychotherapist, and I can tell you, Chappie's got the wording right on that. It's mind manipulation. It is mind control. So, what I would like to see is, yeah, there you go, Billy. You said it. Billy said, we're going to come see you, Sharon. Okay, it's not just me. We are going to have to we're going to have to put a stop, not to what they're doing. We can't control anything they're doing. We're going to have to put a stop to what we're doing. We ourselves are going to have to look at each other the way that Chappie and I look at each other, the way that Billy and I look at each other, and start realizing, what's rational in all this? Is it really rational for us to be paying $3 a gallon for gasoline? Whenever they decide to ratchet it up to that point, because that's what they do. Nothing changes. The amount of oil available doesn't change. The cost of refining the oil doesn't change. The seasonal demand doesn't change. What changes is they decide what the price of gasoline is going to be at any given time. And that's because we've made this deal with the Saudis where we give them guns and they give us oil. I mean, essentially, that's it. That's our deal with the Saudis. Our deal with the Saudis is we give them the kinds of military toys that they need to keep their country. They're using them on their own people. The Saudis are not looking to use those weapons on anybody outside their border. They're looking to use those weapons on their own people because their own people hate their guts. Why? Well, because we're pouring billions of dollars into their country, and it's all going to the royal family. The royal family uses it for whatever they want to, and the rest of the country can go hang. And so, they have to protect themselves against their own people. There's a lot of terrorism in Saudi Arabia against the royal family, or attempted. They want to. Anyway, so if you're liberal and you're watching this, or you see this, try to look at this rationally. I'm not a hater. I don't hate Mexicans. I've lived in Mexican neighborhoods. I've lived in Mexican neighborhoods, and I don't dislike their culture. There's a lot of things about their culture that I like. I don't resent their presence, and if they want to speak Spanish to each other in my presence, that's fine with me. But I am against people coming into this country who and just taking citizenship for granted. They just take the rights of citizenship. They take it. They rip it from our hands, you know. And I think to myself, gosh, I think of all the, what I've put into this country. I've put a lot into this country. My family's put a lot into this country. Your families have put a lot into this country. And, and what do? They walk across the border, and as soon as at Ricky Tick, they got themselves a used car, a cell phone, a pair of Nike shoes, all the stuff that they saw that they wanted. And they're doing just fine. But they didn't work for it. I say go back to your own country and do what we did in this country, which was to fight a revolution and then fight to keep the rights that we gained. Now I say we, of course I wasn't there. I didn't have a musket. I've shot a musket, but I wasn't in a militia, and I've read plenty of books about the Revolutionary War. I know how ungodly that was. I had members of my own family that fought in that war on both sides. And so, what I'm saying is that it's our country and we need to protect it. It's our water, we need to protect it. Those are our cell phones and we need to protect them. It's our freedom and we need to protect it. And if we don't protect it, and the way we protect it is by stopping people from just coming into the country whenever they want to. And you know what? I actually can see where we might just say, hey, why don't we just not take anybody into the country for a while? Let's reassess the situation. Let's do a real census. Real census. Not the kind where we just go around and ask people questions, but one where we find out who the hell is living here. How many of you are there? And assess whether or not, we want any more people in this country right now. I know exactly what some ultra liberal, neoliberal actually would say to me. He'd say, really, what you're worried about, Ted, is you're worried about a browner America. And my response to that is Mark Bailey. I was just talking to you, brother. I was talking about you actually, and it was good stuff. Believe me. It's our country. It belongs to us. It's our freedom. And if we don't stand up and fight for it, where are we going to be? It may be that we may save the American continent. And by the American continent, I'm not talking about down south. I know that the American continent stretches from, the bottom of Mexico up to the top of Canada. I understand that. But I'm just talking about America, our part of the continent. We may be able to keep this continent free of the New World Order. It's possible. I can see where it could happen. Right now, we've got the stuff to do it. But we are going to have to take control of those elements that control our border. And one thing we got to do is stop squabbling with each other. We have got to stop hating each other. You got a civil. I know Mark Bailey's got a Civil War flag somewhere in his house. He's got one on his bumper sticker or something. I know that for a fact. Well, if he doesn't, he's recently got rid of them. Is all I got to say. And that's fine. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that at all. But what I do want is I want Mark to know that I respect him. Of course, Mark does know that. Of how it was that lost causes often become Cold Wars, and that's what we've got. We've got a Cold War in this country. The Cold War exists between the South, the descendants of the people in the South who lost the war and felt that the South is going to rise again. Is actually, it got to. I believe that. the South is going to rise again is something that people truly believe. That and they go to work and they eat their lunch and they play with their kids and they go to bed at night with that thought somewhere in their head, and it creates a division between themselves and other people. But on the other hand, it also preserves. No, rebel flags are not about racism. Rebel flags are about reminding ourselves of the fact. In fact, a lot of the American spirit, a lot of what I want to preserve, is actually tied up in that. It's actually tied up in what got crushed out of the South and out of the rest of the country during Reconstruction. I don't think any rational person really wants to bring back slavery. I don't think any rational person wants. I think all rational people want the different races that are packed into each other into this country to start working things out, where to where we're not repeating our past. Thank you, Chappie, for that. To where we're not repeating our past. To where moving forward, as a lot of people like to say. So if you're left wing, you're listening to this. Having a strong, secure border is not a racist issue. That is not we hate Mexicans. That is we want to hold on to what we have. And Mexicans and Guatemalans and Hondurans and other people from from down there want to come up here and take it. And whether or not they're entitled to something based on the way that the CIA and a lot of large American companies that became multinational companies operated down there is a different conversation to have. It's a different conversation. It's not this conversation. We need to settle our border security first. Then we can talk all we want to about what we owe other countries for what we did in the past, if anything. But they're going to have to stand in line. As far as I'm concerned, the American Indian is first in line for that. I'm sorry, Native Americans are first in line. After that, maybe we can talk about other people. The British, the French, the Italians, the Portuguese, the Spanish, empire after empire after empire. Colonialism was rampant during that period of time, and we were a part of it. Do we go back and make reparations? I don't know. I really don't know. White man crazy. I don't want to talk about that right now. I probably what I had to say wouldn't be something that another liberal would want to hear anyway. But first off, we established the fact that we need to secure our borders. Guys, let's get this out of the way so that we can move on and do something else. Now, if Nancy Pelosi was watching this right now, and if she had the sway that she needed, which she doesn't, to bring about such a thing, I would say to her, go down there, put your name on a check for $5 billion and hand it to the guy in the White House so that we can start our government back up again. And let's sit down and start talking about how we can get Mitch McConnell out of the Senate. Thank God the Speaker of the House is leaving. That guy, that guy that looks like a sinister, aging Eddie Munster. I can never remember his name. Paul Ryan. He's gone. Thank God. And let's start talking about, Nancy. I'm gonna tell you, if Nancy Pelosi was listening to this, I'm gonna tell you. I'm not kidding. You guys, you Democrats that have been there for a long time, your time is about up. The populist Democrats, and I'm one of them, are catching up to you. You almost got it. You almost got it. You almost. If Bill Nelson and Beto O'Rourke had won, you'd be staring down the barrel of a powerful populist Democrat Party. You would be. And what people saw as Democrats in 2 years from now wouldn't be Uncle Joe Biden or you or any of the other old school, big money, hooked up with Wall Street, my pocket is open to you big fella guys. You'd be looking at a bunch of people who didn't mind living on their $174,000 a year that they got in Congress and would be looking at passing bills that were good for you and me and not for themselves. So anyway, that's it. The Tea Party had it right when they said we need to clean house. The Tea Party said it everything from the polite way that Chappie just said. We need to sweep it out, To they said everything from that to we need to screw a fire hose onto a douche nozzle and stick that thing right up Congress's wazoo and blow everybody out the other end. Either way, I'm fine with it, But we need to start over and do something else. So, from Temple, Texas, and from the great nation of America, this is Ted Clevenger for the Butcher Shop, and I'll be seeing you later.